Hi everyone, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur, and I hope that you're doing well. I owe the genesis of this video to the conjunction of a lens and a drum, because I'd like to explore a certain theme in the stories of Jorge Luis Borges, one of my all-time favorite short story writers, someone I am reading and rereading just about every year, and I think a writer that a great number of you are familiar with and also enjoy, probably for the same reasons. I sometimes think that the works of Jorge Luis Borges could be described as a hall of mirrors that reflect every concept available to humanity, the infinity of the universe. And then if you then took that hall of mirrors with all those reflections and threw a brick into it, each sliver of the shattered mirrors that had all those infinite reflections, each sliver would be a single short story by Jorge Luis Borges, including the little microfictions like House of Asterion. So he's one of my all-time favorites. And I was paraphrasing and parodying the opening sentence from Tlön, Uqbar, Orbis, Tertius, which my great friends at the Codex Cantina did a video on earlier this week. I'll link that in the description box. But that story includes this incredible little, false epigraph. Mirrors in copulation are abominable, for they multiply the number of mankind. And it turns out then that actual line is, for one of those Gnostics, the visible universe was an illusion, or more precisely, a sophism. Mirrors in fatherhood are hateful because they multiply and proclaim it. Interesting. And I like to focus on the fact that that's attributed to a Gnostic within Uqbar and the heresiarchs and such. A place that may not actually exist and is only existing in one or perhaps just a few encyclopedia translations. And I want to explore the concept of secret knowledge that Jorge Luis Borges presents, the concept of Gnosticism or secret knowledge or hidden knowledge that only a few will be able to access or possess, the privileged knowledge, if you will, is something that is pervasive in 20th century literature. It's pervasive in concepts across human history, human culture, human literature. But Jorge Luis Borges takes in a lot of his stories, takes a very particular slant on this concept of privileged knowledge or secret knowledge. And it's a slant that I think is quite unique, and it's something that causes me to return to his stories. They tap into a different nerve. Because for many writers, the concept of secret knowledge is and this privileged knowledge is it's going to set somebody free. It's going to free rip off the cataracts, rip off the blinders, and somebody can see the world as it really is, see reality as it really is, see themselves as they really are. Even one of the formative texts for a number of these writers, the Coptic Gospel of Thomas, is sayings 2 and 3 are almost like key sayings. Saying 2, let him who seeks continue seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will become troubled. When he becomes troubled, he will be astonished, and he will rule over all. This idea that the privileged knowledge gives one this sense of authority, of power. Even when it is the person is condemned or fails, there is still this sense of superiority or power. Saying 3, if those who lead you say to you, see, the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, it is in the sea, then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you and it is outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father. But if you will not know yourselves, you dwell in poverty, and it is you who are that poverty. That, in a sense, by not possessing the secret knowledge, one does not know oneself. One dwells in what's been described as an imaginative poverty, or this almost like lesser than version of the real life, the real experience. And that exists in a number of texts. But Jorge Luis Borges takes a very different perspective with that idea of secret knowledge or privileged knowledge. Tlön, Uqbar, Orbis, Tertius is probably one of the more benign works in which he examines that idea. I will probably do lots of spoilers, so I'm going to just list some stories I'm going to refer to. Garden of Forking Paths, the 3 versions of Judas, The Secret Miracle, of course the Aleph, Death in the Compass is I think a key critical one. And then House of Asterion. So within these stories, there's generally this sense that someone has a secret. Someone is able to find out something that others aren't aware of. It is perhaps the answer to a mystery. It is perhaps the solution to a riddle. It is some in the Aleph, it is the Aleph itself, this microcosmic, infinite, almost like string theory exploration, where the entire universe can exist as almost like a brain, B-R-A-N-E, for those who enjoy M-brain theory, in this chink in the wall, and the whole universe and all time exists there. And within those stories, Borges examines what happens to the person who acquires that knowledge. Is the person set free? Is the person somehow privileged and elite? And I think the answer is generally not. As I mentioned, Tlön, Uqbar, Orbis, Tertius is one of the more benign ones. But in a work like Death in the Compass, which I'm about to massively spoil if you've never read it, go read it, it's amazing. Death in the Compass involves a detective who is figuring out that there's, the conjunction of a triangle. Actually, there's a rhombus, that's a diamond, and there's going to be one last murder that he can go to the crime and catch it and figure it out that it's a pattern of 4, not a pattern of 3. And so this detective goes there. He has cracked the riddle. He's solved the mystery of the crimes, and he goes there to become the 4th victim. And he even then has that moment where he goes, well, you've created a labyrinth that involves too many lines, and you rather should have had, the first 2 here, and then one in between and another in between. And so all of them are occurring on a single one-dimensional line rather than the two-dimensional plane with 4 murders. And so he says this right as he's being murdered and becoming the 4th victim. So his acquisition of the secret knowledge leads to his annihilation. That's something as well that occurs in the House of Asterion, which again, I'm about to spoil. Asterion, not Asterion. In the House of Asterion, we are in Asterion. Asterion is in his labyrinth because he's the Minotaur. And so he has lived here, and it's a 2.5-page microfiction where he's sort of reflecting on his life and what it means. And he, towards the end, he goes, since then there has been no pain for me in solitude, because I know that my Redeemer lives, and in the end he will rise and stand above the dust. And he goes on to think about what his Redeemer, he goes, what will my Redeemer be like, I wonder? Will he be bull or man? Could he possibly be a bull with the face of a man, or will he be like me? And the final paragraph then of the story is, can you believe it, Ariadne, said Theseus? The Minotaur scarcely defended itself. And that is because Asterion believes Theseus, who is his murderer, is his redeemer, that his executioner is his redeemer. So again, the idea of capturing that knowledge, like, oh, my Redeemer lives, and of course a great inversion of verses from the New Testament and the letters of Paul. Asterion, acquires this knowledge that there's a Redeemer who can release him, and it turns out that release is, again, his annihilation. And so we have Borges taking this idea of Gnosticism as privilege and ultimately revealing that it is not necessarily going to lead to elevation or edification for the person who acquires that knowledge, but rather it is a very dark form of knowledge. And I don't know that that's Borges' own philosophy of life. It is not, as I think, in contrast, a writer like Thomas Ligotti very much has that idea that life is not only a cosmic accident, but a cosmic mistake, and that all of these evil things happen, and the perpetuation of life in itself thus is a perpetuation of all these evil things that occur in life. I don't think in his nonfiction, which I've read, his essays, Borges does not seem to espouse that worldview, but his stories allow us to examine and probe that concept, that it is not all about the solving the mysteries, and that solving the mysteries somehow leads to this solution and a removal of chaos, and therefore something that feels more ordered and is better, but rather leads to death, to frustration. The story of the Aleph itself, we have a character who's lived his entire life with this little chink he saw when he fell, and that again sort of is the entire universe that he gets to see, and that he goes and spends time down there and then tries to writing out this long poem that's going to detail the entire universe. And we have our narrator who sees it and then ultimately becomes destructive. He in a sense wants to release his colleague, who's not really his friend, from being trapped and tied to this Aleph, but he does it with this sense of destruction, that he wants the Aleph destroyed. He wants the building that contains it destroyed, and that it's an act of vengeance almost. And I find that concept interesting. I find it interesting because Borges, as playful as he is, can reveal these very dark truths about humanity, and reveal that sense of, curiosity killed the cat. That despite curiosity and creativity being two of the hallmark attributes of humanity, attributes that I try to build in myself, that I try to instill in students or in my daughters, that within Borges, curiosity is not necessarily a good thing, and that it frequently leads to a very dark denouement. So those are just some thoughts on some stories that I've certainly enjoyed. Oh, Garden of Forking Paths, of course. The secret is, why would he have to go to this person's house? And it's ultimately revealed that he's going to take a life just to give some secret code in order to lead to the bombing of a city during a war. And so that this is just part of an act of espionage and an act of war, and that there isn't this massive mystery. And I think the other part that makes it even more sinister within Borges is that works like Garden of Forking Paths or Death of the Compass show how arbitrary the construction of this mystery is. That it is not a secret mystery designed to lead to, positive things, but it's rather often frequently a very arbitrary or haphazard conjunction of circumstances and symbols that someone will then manipulate for destructive purposes. And that ultimately, in going back to Tlön, Uqbar, and Orbis Tertius, that the whole genesis of those different imagined worlds, imagined realities, and the way in which they're going to be subtly inserted into actual history, into actual works, to slowly almost like infect and take over our real world, is an act of destruction. It's an act that is very sinister and is plotted. So just an interesting thought. It reminded me, of course, as well, specifically Tlön Uqbar, with the massive secret societies and contrived symbols that permeate Foucault's Pendulum from Umberto Eco. Again, a work that reveals how dangerous that secret knowledge can actually be, the violence it can lead to. It reminds me as well of some of the ideas that occur in Miss Lonelyhearts from Nathanael West, that as Miss Lonelyhearts and Shrike have their interactions, ultimately what is revealed is a very, very much an apocalypse for Miss Lonelyhearts, as it is for the characters in a number of those stories from Borges. I had mentioned, of course, the stories of Thomas Ligotti. Songs of a Dead Dreamer very much describe a world in which the knowledge is that awful things are happening and will happen. The darkness and sort of that the interactions between cosmic beings and humans in the stories of HP Lovecraft and others reveal that same concept, that that humans can be so insignificant, and that acquiring this interaction with an alien being is just a horrifying and mind-shattering experience. And then more recently, a work like Annihilation from Jeff Vandermeer, I think, taps into some of those ideas as well. So these were just some ideas around how Borges explores the concept of Gnosticism or secret knowledge or privileged knowledge. But let me know your thoughts. Let me know if there are other works that you think I could connect to these ideas. And again, I hope everybody's having a great weekend. Thanks.